Hello, and today I am going to talk about herbs. So I've talked about herbs a little bit, especially if you've watched any of the Mountain Rose Herbs videos that I posted of the things that I ordered from them, and I haven't really talked a whole lot about it since. I think I did a burn salve video, but I wanted to do, and there was honey all on the outside of my mug, and it's not all over my hand. So I wanted to do a video about my thoughts on taking an herb course versus reading books, or how to get started on herbs to begin with. So a year and a half ago, I got really hungry to learn more about herbs and how to basically start our own apothecary at home. And I had no idea where to start, where to begin, what to reference. And I was like, oh, I'll become an herbalist and take a course. And I looked up a bunch of different courses. And the one that I ended up buying was Rosemary Gladstar's, called The Art and Science of Herbalism. I bought it last January. They were having like a New Year's sale on it. And so it was, I think they had like $150 off. So it ended up being, I think, either $250 or $300, which is a lot of money, and why I am talking about this video, because a year and a few months later, I would not recommend going that route. And I'll explain why my thoughts are on that. When you don't know where else to begin, you're like, well, I'm just gonna go get a course. So here is some of the blessings of the course. I'll talk about some of the positives from it. I have access to it for 3 years, and the option that I bought, you can buy an online only, you can buy a notebook only, or you can buy both, and I did both. So they did send me this binder. So I have access to all the online stuff, which has a lot of videos from Rosemary Gladstar. And then I also have this huge binder, which is full of notebooks of each course. So like there's all the introduction stuff, and then like lesson 1, the entire lesson 1 of the online, besides the videos, is all in this notebook. And honestly, the first 2 lessons from the science and art of, I said herbalism, but it's herbology course, is very helpful. So she goes into, which, I say is very helpful. It was very helpful for me because I knew nothing. Now that I have done this, there are so many books out there that cover this exact same thing. That is what I'm going to go into next, but we're going to go over positives. So positives are, I will have these for life. Another positive was, well, it just got me started. I didn't know where to begin, and this is what got me going. Okay, so the reasons why I wouldn't advise buying a course. One is, with herbalism, you are not, unless you go to like some big school, you're never really going to get certified. I mean, even taking this course, it's like, oh, you'll get a certificate. And at the end of each lesson, they give you like homework. And I did the first one, and that's it, because it honestly felt like I was back in college. Like, it wasn't fun for me to do, which sounds stupid, but I'm like, I learn by doing, not by writing. And I think that's kind of like, it makes you feel like you're doing stuff by like writing out, sending in your answers, and then they get back with you, which again, some people might really like that. For me, it's like, I really want to learn this stuff, and then I want to apply it and have fruit from it. I just don't want to gain a whole bunch of head knowledge and not actually apply what I'm learning. And I realize with the course stuff, especially when it's on a time frame, there's some courses that you only have access to for a few months. And then you're like pressured into doing all of this studying, but you're not actually applying anything because you're so concerned about just getting the information right. But if you're not taking the information you're learning and actually applying it to something, then I don't actually feel like it's worth it anyways. So, yeah, that's one thing, is the whole homework side of things. Wasn't really a fan of that. So even though I still have access to this course for another 2 years, I'm not really too worried about doing it, doing all the homework lessons and getting certified from them, because I really don't care about that. Two, when you have an online course, especially if it's only online, thankfully with Rosemary's, it is like you have your own notebooks, but you are subject to their order of how they want to introduce you to things. So the reason I wanted to get into herbs in the first place was because I am trying to bring wholeness and healing to my body so that way we can be totally healthy and get pregnant. And again, we don't know why we're not getting pregnant. So I'm just doing everything in my natural ability to learn about healing and what I can do to bring alignment to my body where maybe there's not alignment. And so with the Rosemary Gladstar course, the stuff on the reproductive system, how herbs affect the reproductive organs, wasn't until lesson, I think, 7 or 6. And had I only had the online course, I mean, obviously you can skip ahead, but when things are on a screen, I feel like it's you're less likely to skim through it and find where you really need, to where if you have an actual book, you can skim through it and go right to the section where you need it. So that's one of my big things with courses versus buying books. So if you spend $300, which is on the low end of courses, you could spend that $300 and get a huge stack of really good quality books and have a library that you are able to pass down to your children, and their children, because you have these books that are worth something instead of this online course that you won't have access to forever. I was just talking to Scott about this video, and he made such a good point. I said
Thank you.
the $300 that you spend in the course you could have spent on, and then you were like, seeds. And I was like, that is genius.
You need that good dirt.
Yeah, you could spend it on getting the books you need, which would be like, I don't know, those probably 4 books or 3 books I recommend would be like $80 at the most. And then the other money you could spend
actually growing herbs.
Yeah. I much prefer, if I would have known what I know now, I would have gone the book route and just found books. So in the box below, I'm going to link books that I personally have. There are some books that I really do want. I just can't buy them all at once. But I'll also link those below as well. So some of the books that I recommend, and if you've watched my Mountain Rose Herbs videos, you'll know I've already talked about these before, but Dawn Combs is one of my favorite authors when it comes to herbs. So I actually had the great privilege of getting to meet Dawn last May. She is near Columbus, Ohio, and her family has a farm, and then they had a coffee shop slash soda shop that they, I believe, have now moved to their farm. And so I had bought this book first, which I found out about from the Mother Earth News podcast, is how I found out about her. So she talked about this book, so I went ahead and bought it then, and it's called Conceiving Healthy Babies. And this book, she goes into her story, all the things she did, and then this is really helpful. She goes through all of the herbs and if it's good for pre-pregnancy, pregnancy, and breastfeeding, and what those herbs do, which I find very helpful. But when I met Dawn, I mentioned to her that I had bought Rosemary Gladstar's course and was trying to learn about these things, and she kind of had a funny look on her face, and I was like, do you not agree with Rosemary Gladstar? Because she learned a lot from her too. And she's like, no, I agree with her. She said, I just think that there's something about, she said, taking a course versus actually growing the herbs, making things with the herbs. And I was like, that is so true. So she's all about interacting with the herbs and learning as you go rather than just the information. So I think that's why I find her books so helpful, is because they're so practical and it gets you doing something. So the number one book that I would recommend for the herb stuff is this book, Heal Local. It's one of her books. And the reason that I love it is because the way that she goes into it at the beginning is basically like the first chapter of my herb course. She talks about how to harvest herbs, how to know if herbs are good quality, how to make a tincture, and all the different things that you would need to make a tincture, whether it's alcohol, vinegar, glycerin. Then she goes into how to make an herbal infused oil. She goes into teas, how to make a decoction tea, how to make an infusion tea. All of these things were in my first chapter of the course from Rosemary Gladstar. Then she goes into steams and poultices and compresses, bone broth, like all of those things, all the things you can do with herbs. Then she goes actually into all of the most common herbs and the benefits and what you would use those herbs for. Then another chapter is on like your first aid cabinet. So if you want to create your own home apothecary, these are the top areas where she would recommend you make things. So that's why I love this book. I feel like it gets you going and it makes it actionable instead of just sitting there and learning, but it makes you want to immediately apply what you're learning. So I love this one. This has been, I reference it all the time. Anytime we're starting to get symptoms of something, I just go back to the index and look up like headaches or cough and then go to that section, and it's always been very, very helpful. Another book that I had just recently got, which was recommended by Rosemary Gladstar in her course, is this book called Holistic Herbal by David Hoffman. And the reason I love this book is because I have found it's hard to find books that actually have illustrations of the herb, and I'm all about pictures and getting to see the herbs, especially when you want to forage them yourself. So his book has the pictures of each herb, and he actually has so many. So you can see. And I also love, taking Rosemary Gladstar's course, she recommends you keep like an herbal diary yourself of each herb, which I think is really cool. And I actually have one. I can't find it, which is pretty embarrassing. But from when I started, like you have like Feverfew, and then you write down the actual official name of it, and then the parts of the herb that's used, the things that it's good for, and then you write down your experiences with it. So she recommends when you're taking the course that you make a tea of each of the herbs individually and just drinking it, seeing how it makes you feel, and then writing it down. That way you have your own experience of what that herb has helped you with, or if it's good for you, not good for you. Like Feverfew, it's good for headaches, but it can cause cramping. And I noticed immediately after making a cup of tea of just the Feverfew, I started getting like cramping. And so I don't drink Feverfew anymore because it didn't make me feel great. So that's a good way to tell if something's actually going to be beneficial for you or not. Back to the Holistic Herbal book. I also love this because it's hardback, and I got this from Thrift Books. I'll use Thrift Books as my like wish list to keep track of all the books that I hope for, and I think this one showed up for $5, and I could not believe it. So I went ahead and ordered it before we left for South Africa, and then right when we got home, I dove into it. I had wished, so we got it like a few days before we went to South Africa, and I was tempted to bring it with, but it was so big and thick that I was like, no, like I'm not gonna bring this big of a book. But then when I was sitting outside on my blanket, I was like, you know what I would love to be doing is looking through this book, because sometimes you don't really want to read, but you want to like look at the pictures and stuff. At least for me, that's what I like doing. So I do like this book. I don't think he does things the way that I would do them, which is why I really trust Dawn Combs's book, because she's very holistic, whereas in his book he recommends using petroleum jelly to infuse herbs and make like an herbal infusion, which I think is a terrible idea. So yeah, you just have to have discernment with some of these herbal books, because they have great instructions. Like he has great instructions for making infusions and decoctions, but then when I got to that section, I was like, ew, I would never use petroleum jelly for anything. That stuff is so bad for you. Really, I like his book as a reference guide for all of the different herbs that he goes into, and it's also really helpful because he goes into the parts used, how to collect it, what it's good for, and the proper dosage of how to prepare a tea or a tincture. And then at the bottom he'll give like suggestions of good combinations, and then he also has like little warnings of things that aren't good for pregnancy or breastfeeding and stuff. So that's nice. And then if you want just a very simple practical book, I've talked about this one before too, but it's Rosemary Gladstar's Medicinal Herbs book, and this one was really helpful because she just basically goes through your top herbs and goes into detail about them, and then there's also like a recipe for them. So like the calendula, she'll give you like a salve and how to make an oil. So again, it's like super practical. I've applied so many of these, especially when we were growing stuff last year. This book really inspired me because it's all stuff you would commonly grow anyways, or if you're looking to grow things, this book is great because like she gives you very practical things of what to do with the things you grow. Sometimes you grow things in your garden and you're like, why did I grow this in the first place? Whereas like, okay, like this year I planted valerian, and that's actually why I bought valerian seeds last year. I didn't have enough room in my garden for them, so I never ended up growing them, but I'm growing them this year. And then she'll give recipes for what to do with the valerian. So this is another one of my top favorite books. And this is why I just think it's so silly to buy a course, because you can buy a book, and when you're out in your garden, you can like sit in your garden with your book and learn about these things. You can't do that with an online course. You're not going to sit in your garden with a laptop. Well, that doesn't, I mean, you can, but I'm not going to. Whereas a book, you actually want to like get dirty and get out there and, I don't know, like apply these things. So those are my top 3 books that I recommend. A great place to get seeds for herbs is called Strictly Medicinal Herb Seeds. I think that's what it is. I'll have that linked below. But he also has some books, which is on my wish list of things that I want. I actually think I'm going to go ahead and order the one because I really, really would like it. But he has, I think, 4 different books on herbs, and just from following him for a little bit, I feel like he's someone that I trust to learn from. And that's also a great resource of a place to buy herb seeds from, is from them. So it's not too late to start planting herbs in your garden. I've had some of you ask if I have found another place to get dried herbs since I've stopped buying from Mountain Rose Herbs. I haven't bought any more dried herbs besides what I've bought from iHERB since then, but my goal this year in our garden is to try to grow as many herbs and dry them as possible of herbs that I use. So what I was buying from Mountain Rose Herbs, um, I'm trying to focus and make sure I give space in my garden for those things, and I've gotten a lot of those seeds started. Um, Otherwise, Foster Farm Botanicals, I have ordered from them in the past, and they seem to be like pretty just focused on growing good food, not really liberal. So I mean, I could be wrong, but just from what I've learned from them, I think they're pretty good. And I've been buying from iHERB. I'm thinking what I might do is make some like I mentioned all these books that say all of these things, but I think I'm gonna do a few follow-up videos of things that I've learned about herbs in case that's helpful, like the difference between an infusion tea and a decoction tea, how to make a tincture, and I've made the salve video. So I don't know, I'm just thinking about those again, like all of those things are in these books. So if you'd rather just buy the books, then that's fine too. But it was just something that I was thinking about. Um, yeah, so I hope this video was helpful and that it was more encouraging. I don't want to like be demoralizing with the whole course thing, but at the same time, I feel like courses have become really trendy and everyone's creating a course for everything, which I think it's great to give money to people that really are providing good value. Um, I also think when something becomes super trendy, it's like, I just want to get back to like the basics. And for me, that's like books and things that are like tactile. This has gone way longer than I thought. I hope this was helpful. And yeah, let me know if you want me to do more herb stuff because I'd be happy to. But I also would be happy if you'd just rather buy the books.